thousands of traders trading in the markets every single day, which means there are even more strategies. The hardest decision is figuring out which strategy is right for you. I'm sure you're familiar with the term support and resistance. That is something that I use every single week to help me make money on the charts. But before I got to the stage of actually making money, I had to understand how to use it and what it actually is. That's why in this video, I'll be able to go through support and resistance and what it actually is, strong areas of interest, weak areas of interest, and how you can apply it to your day-to-day trading. Let's start with the basics. What even is support and resistance? So I always like to think of support as a floor and resistance as a ceiling. Price uses the floors and the ceilings to move. That's where we are able to find our areas of interest, where we're able to execute on our trades and basically capitalize on the move whilst it is happening. If we come back to thinking support is a floor and resistance is a ceiling, if we are downstairs in the living room, obviously we have a floor beneath us and we have a ceiling above us. If we then decide, oh, we're a little bit tired, we want to go to bed, so we take the stairs up, and then once we've reached obviously the top of the stairs, we start walking on the floor. But if you think about it, that floor was previously our ceiling when we were downstairs. We've basically done what price does in real life. We've broken, retested, and continued, right? Essentially. Most times than not, support is used for price to bounce and go higher. Whereas resistance, on the other hand, is quite the opposite. Since it is the ceiling, it is restricting price from going higher. With the example of us going upstairs, we're price on the floor, our support, but then we go up, decide to break through the ceiling, which imagine it as a resistance, and then continue to walk on it as our new floor. So the resistance has turned into support. I will go through the examples on the chart so it will be a little bit easier to visualize, but I just want you guys to kind of picture it or try to picture it in your head. So with that being said, support is there for price to bounce off of and look to potentially go higher, and resistance is the opposite, where it restricts price from going higher. However, that does not mean that if there is a resistance, price cannot break through it and continue to go higher, and the same when there is a support, price cannot break below and continue lower. That is false. Support can turn into resistance and resistance can turn into support. So the example that I gave just now of us being downstairs and being tired and going upstairs, we have just turned resistance into support, because if we're downstairs, above us is the ceiling, which is also known as the resistance, and then we have used the stairs to break through the resistance, started walking on the new floor, which previously was our ceiling, so we have turned resistance into support. The same thing is if we're upstairs, we are using the floor as obviously our support. We use the stairs, which is us breaking through the support, and being downstairs and looking up and we see the ceiling above us, which previously was the floor. So that is an example of support turning into resistance. So let's take a look at the charts. Let's start off with a super simple and basic example on the line charts, just so you can visualize it a little bit better. So as we can see, this is an example of support, because what we can see is price bouncing off of it, i.e. support equals our floor, bouncing, and it continues to go higher. Price is trying to break below, but it is failing, so it's just continuing to go high. If we then have a little look at resistance, it is doing the same exact thing, just opposite, essentially. So remember, resistance is our ceiling, the same way support is our floor. So as we can see, price is rejecting, and failing to break above. So it continues to go lower. So it is there to restrict price from going higher, okay? With that being said, it does not mean that price cannot turn support into resistance and resistance into support. If you remember the example we talked about where we were downstairs and we were a little bit tired, wanted to go to sleep, so we went, used the stairs and continued to go upstairs, that is an example of resistance turning into support, because we're downstairs, we have the ceiling above us, which is our resistance, and then we use the stairs, which essentially, whilst we use the stairs, this is what happens to price, okay? This movement right there is us using the stairs, okay? Then once we reach the top of the stairs, we start walking on the new floor. This is what happens to price, okay? Price is basically done a break and retest. So like we did, we use the stairs, continue to walk on the new floor, which, remember, the new floor was our previous ceiling when we were up downstairs. So it's the same with price. It was trying to break above. It finally decided to break, retest, and use resistance as a support zone. Okay, so same exact thing as our example. The same exact thing applies to support. So as we can see, obviously price is failing to break below. If we're then upstairs and we're like, oh, feeling a little bit hungry, might go and grab something from the fridge. So we use the stairs. So whilst we are using the stairs, this is what price is doing. Then finally reach the bottom of the stairs and just start walking and grabbing our drink and our food. That means that price has just done basically a break and retest again and used support as a resistance, because the same way we use these stairs at this point right here, we're using the stairs, got to the bottom. If we look up, yep, the ceiling is above us, but if you think that ceiling before was our floor, so it's the same exact thing. Support can turn into resistance, and resistance can turn into support. With that being said, let's take a look at the charts and see real life examples of areas of support and resistance. So the first one is very, very simple, as we can see, is resistance. Personally, for me, in order for an area of support or resistance to be valid, it needs to have a minimum of 3 touches. That's because I think the more touches it has, the more respected the zone is, and obviously the fewer the touches, the less respected it is. So as we can see, it has multiple touches off of this zone, which that zone is actually our resistance zone, because price is reacting from it and continuing to go lower, trying to break, unable to, so it continues to go lower, obviously used as our ceiling. If we then take a look at an example of a support, it looks just like this. Price is rejecting and bouncing off of this area multiple times until it finally decides to continue to go higher, okay? Price is trying to break below, but it is unable to do so. So support is there to support price and use it as a floor to continue to go higher. The same way we did an example of support turning into resistance and resistance turning into support on the line chart, I want to also show you an example on the real chart. So we have this example right here, is essentially we have support, okay? Support is here and price is bouncing off of this area of support multiple times, failing to break below. However, at this point right here, price then decides to break below our support, have a retest, and use it as resistance, okay? So this is literally us upstairs, then we use the stairs, look up, yeah, we see the ceiling that we were previously using as a floor. So it's literally as simple as that, okay? So this is just a great example, and it has more than 3 touches, so it is a valid area of support. Very similar thing happens when we see price turn resistance into support. In this instance, we can see a very valid area of resistance where price is retesting, failing to break above, when finally it decides to do just that at this point right here, then have a pullback and use the resistance zone as support, okay? Literally us being downstairs, use the stairs, then walk on the floor, which was previously our ceiling. So it is actually very, very simple. However, you're probably wondering, how do you actually identify these areas of interest? Okay, what is a valid area and what is invalid? The best way I can describe it is, a valid area for me personally needs a minimum of 3 touches, and it needs to have a reaction off of that area, okay? So for example, if we were to draw an area of support right here, okay? This is our support and resistance zone. It doesn't really have any significance for price, okay? Price completely disregards this zone and doesn't have any sort of reaction, okay? Yeah, it might have a wick there, but what significance does it have? None. However, if we slightly adjust this zone and draw it over here, as we can see, price is having a reaction once it reaches this zone. So it is rejecting, using it as support, breaking, resistance, broke, support, and continue to go higher, okay? This might not be the best example, but it is actually a good example to use, because you guys can see that it's not always perfect, okay? Price might not always reach your area of interest. Price still has a reaction off of it over here and over here, but if it doesn't reach it, you might not be able to take the trade. But and that's a different lesson in a different video, but this is for now. As long as it has a minimum of 3 touches, once price reaches that area, it actually has a reaction off of it, and it actually does something, rather than just completely disregarding it and going up or down. One very useful thing to remember is that the higher time frames help you understand the direction of price a lot better. Meaning, for this area of support and resistance on the weekly time frame is a lot more important than, for example, a support and resistance area on the 30-minute or the 50-minute or even lower time frames, okay? Those time frames are used for entries, and to be able to kind of get a closer look and see what the higher time frames will also do. Is it actually going to go up? Is it going to go down? The lower time frames are used obviously for entries and more specific outlooks on the markets. However, the daily, the weekly, and the 4-hour all dictate the direction of price, okay? If the weekly is bullish and the 30-minute is bearish, okay, if you're a scalper, it might be useful, but most of the time, the price is going to go up because the weekly is bullish, okay? Obviously, it has pullbacks and things like that. That's all the extra detail I don't want you to worry about now. I just want you to think about weekly time frames are a lot stronger than the lower time frames, okay? So in this instance, remember, each candle is a week, okay? So it's taken so long for price to actually have a break and a retest and then use this resistance as support, okay? So whilst all of this is happening, the lower time frames are constantly shifting, bullish, bearish, and then the weekly is still bullish here, having the retest, having the pullback, and then continues to go higher, okay? So this is a lot stronger of an area than, for example, the 30 minutes. Now, that might seem like very simple and a very basic explanation, which it was, but I struggled to understand how to even find areas of support and resistance and what they needed in order for them to be valid, okay? If support turns into resistance and resistance turns into support, and how does that actually happen, okay? Without the basic knowledge, it will be hard for you to learn the advanced, the medium, then the advanced stuff, okay? So you need to start learning the basics. See, this was just an introduction of the first support and resistance videos, but there will be more and more complex videos, and then you'll be able to put the pieces together. But I hope you found this video useful. If you do have any questions, do leave them down in the comment section below. Remember, this is just my opinion. Trading is risky and it involves a risk, but support and resistance is a very useful thing to know. Thank you to each and every single one of you guys. I appreciate you all for watching and commenting. If you do want to learn my exact trading strategy, make sure to click the link in bio and join the True Wealth community. More advanced videos to come, so don't stress. These are just introductions to obviously each of the different sections that I am doing. So stay tuned, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.